You are now entering PaleoRadio.
Welcome to PaleoRadio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Thank you, Angela, for that wonderful introduction. We are live in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM. My name is Joe Elder.
I'm Jeremiah Bannister, the newly turned 39-year-old version of Jeremiah Bannister.
Freshly turned 39-year-old.
Oh,
Is
yeah.
that true? Yes.
Oh, totally fresh.
Yes.
Like, so fresh that it's brand new like today, like right now.
Like now.
Yeah, like right now, as I'm speaking, I'm going through this kind of radical regeneration process. I've got power and energy flowing out of my fingertips like crazy in the studio.
Ooh,
You should be here. The
sounds
Shekinah,
awful woo-woo-y.
Yeah, the Shekinah glory is just through the roof, bursting out the seams here. But turning 39 today, super pumped. My kids woke me up with a happy birthday song, and that was tons and tons of fun. Of course, I got a really, really great night of sleep, Joe.
That's fantastic.
I really did. Probably a good solid 3.5 hours.
That's everything that you want and more, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Happy birthday.
Thank you very much.
Your body is 39, but your beard is medieval.
It's totally true, man. My beard is medieval at this point, man. And I got to throw this out there. The Norseman Society, the Historical Society for the Norsemen of Michigan, man. They put I think they actually checked in at PaleoRadio to wish us a happy birthday. And if you would like, and I got to throw this out there, Joe, your birthday's coming up really soon.
Yes, in 3 days.
In 3 days, you're going to turn 22.
Yes. 22 plus 8.
You're going to turn 22.
I'm going to be 30 years old.
30 years old,
30,
man.
30 on 30, baby. I'm going to be like an ESPN story.
Wow.
And so it's the perfect time to evaluate my life and where I'm going and get semi-depressed but semi-happy. Be happy about running the show and, just give yourself a little bit of a moment to see where you're at in the world. So it's a hard thing. But, boy, one thing that's not going to be hard is discussing these topics.
Oh, I'm telling you,
Boatloads.
This is going to be tons of fun. It was an awesome news week. But things like Tomi Lahren.
Yeah,
She's
Tomi
done.
Lahren.
She's out from the blaze, gone.
Is that an actual permanent thing?
Permanent
Really?
ban. As of yesterday, permanent.
As of yesterday, permanente.
Yeah, Glenn Beck said bye. Said, see
Yes.
ya. Over pro-choice stuff. Over her position, the conservatives ought to be pro-choice because of freedom of choice.
Can you believe that? So because of her difference of opinion, they decided to get her off the show. So kind of makes that whole social justice warrior snowflakey argument fly by the wayside. But wow, we have that. We also have Shaq defending Kyrie Irving and the belief that the world is flat.
It blows my mind. My son Athen is really into basketball. In fact, he's got ridiculously insane skills that people are going to see in a video that comes out at the end of April. Wicked skills, dunk master. It's amazing. He can do it at 10. And at his height. So, but
these are facts.
These are facts. But he loves the game. He loves playing basketball. He loves learning about it. And I was reading and I said, hey, Kyrie Irving believes this. He just completely said, well, he's not really as good as, Kyle Korver.
That's
or
right.
other players.
Kyle
He kind of just said, well, yeah, Kyrie, whatever, kind of thing. Like, yeah, he's a cool player. He's on a cool team, but so what kind of thing. He's wrong about that. But yeah, so Shaq brings it up in a podcast. We're going to talk about that. There's a cool site, What Trump Tweets About You. You can check in on Facebook, and then it will go ahead and it will plug something in. It's hilarious, some of the stuff that it crunches out. Ted Koppel had some stuff to say about news and stuff that we have said, in fact, on this show, talking about, because obviously he listens, but stuff to do with the difference between news and opinion and whether or not Fox and MSNBC and CNN, whenever they have opinionators pontificating on their channels, that they change that news icon, that logo.
Yes.
And they just smack on opinion.
Yes.
With it.
They should. It would help out the situation. It definitely would. We're also going to be discussing the FBI releasing that they are indeed investigating people tied with the Trump campaign for collusion with the Ruskies.
With the Ruskies. We got Generation Z. This is something I didn't know. Generation Z is uber conservative. I had no clue. The other thing, interesting, there's two other things just off the top of my head here. A zoo.
Yeah.
Sawing off rhino horns. You're the one who showed me that, I think.
Because of a previous poaching incident at a zoo, actually, where people shot the rhinos and took the horn.
Yeah, it's like 50,000 euros or something like that for one of those rhino horns.
Because of superstition.
Yeah, total superstition. And by the way, and this breaks my heart, I wish I didn't have to say this, but we talked last week about Beck.
Yeah, the turtle.
That turtle died.
That turtle died of poisoning.
From superstition.
Yeah, died of superstition.
Yes, died of superstition. People were throwing coins into a wishing well. Sea turtle was eating them. They pulled close to 1,000 of these coins from the belly of the sea turtle. The sea turtle did not live.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Stuff with that. And I'm just throwing this out there. We can maybe break this down, maybe talk about a paragraph or two from this note. But there was a note to listeners of InfoWars that Alex Jones apologized for the perpetuation of PizzaGate.
Yes, he did.
And this is an interesting call on his part. And we may mention that, but we have a caller right out of the gate.
We do have a caller right out of the gate. We have Kathy calling from BC. How are you doing, Kathy?
Yeah.
Hello.
Hey, we got you there. How are you, Kathy?
Good. How are you?
Good. What did you want to share with us today?
Well, I just want to call and wish you both a happy birthday. I know it's Jeremiah's today, and yours is coming up soon. So
yeah,
I had a quick minute at work, so I wanted to say hello and good morning. Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy.
Thank
much
you
appreciated.
so much. Yeah, we appreciate
problem.
it. Yeah,
I hope you guys have a good day.
Yeah, thank you for the phone call.
Well, absolutely.
All right. Yeah, thank you for listening.
All right, you take care, Jer.
All right. Yeah.
Bye.
At first, they said Kathy from BC, and I'm like, I think I've got a finger on the pulse of that.
Yeah, you may know who this is.
I may know who this person is, and it's just a nice voice, and I'm like, I think I know. But you know what? Thank you so much. I am, at first, I was kind of bummed. I'm not going to lie. Last week, I thought, and I said, man, it was Teresa's birthday last Monday, right? Mm-hmm. So my youngest turned 7. Or was it 8, Joe? What did we find? Yeah, it was 7. 7 is what everybody finalized, right? So 7 years old, and then this week is mine, and I was real busy. I'm on the tail end of this whole sprained rear end thing.
Sprained butt.
Yeah, so I'm finally able now to start moving around and everything. But I was like, do I really want to be on the show on my birthday? And I thought, yes. Totally 100%. It's like the best birthday present.
Yes, of course you do.
It's
why
amazing.
wouldn't you?
Yeah, why wouldn't you? And so, and especially because we can talk about things, for example, like Tomi Lahren.
Yes. This Tomi Lahren stuff is really important, I think, especially because of conservative ideology. But we'll jump into an article here. It's Shakeup Causes Drama at Glenn Beck's The Blaze. It's written by Richard Johnson.
And I want to say this before we even just get into it. I'm sorry for doing that.
No,
but
go ahead.
The article I found, I was looking for, some kind of article on this, and I found page 6, but it was the one shared by The Blaze. And so when I went and read it, as I was reading it, I kind of got the feeling as to why The Blaze shared this particular one. I think it's more generous, but we're gonna analyze it.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, anyways, going into the article, it says Tomi Lahren won't be appearing on Glenn Beck's multi-platform network. Sources say. They also say that Lahren, who was suspended last week after flip-flopping on abortion and declaring herself pro-choice, has been banned permanently. Fans think Beck, once a Ted Cruz backer, has lost his conservative bona fides. He went on Samantha Bee's TBS show in December and apologized for being divisive in the past.
Yeah. Did you see that?
I did. I thought it was actually kind of funny.
It was kind of funny because they were both wearing those ugly sweaters.
Yes, and
those
they were attempting
ridiculous.
to hold hands in the middle, and they were doing kind of a reach to the middle, and they're both hesitant. I thought it was clever. Now, the other thing too is I've said this before and have gotten some ill reviews, but even now more than ever. I think that Glenn Beck is a genuinely nice guy. I think he's had problems with his ideas, but I'll tell you what, one thing you can't say about him is that he's a person who will not change his mind. Because he will. He does adapt his arguments and change. And I think he's kind of funny, actually.
He is. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what
he's more
started
talented
as.
than people give him credit for.
And people forget that I think he was a stand-up comic. Wasn't he? Didn't he do some stand-up?
I'm not sure, but I wouldn't think
of
it to be...
He did, I think he did radio stuff with, like, music, too.
Sure. I wouldn't think of that to be out of his wheelhouse.
No. He's a funny guy. He's a creative person. He's a visionary mindset. He's a wild man. Right? I mean, he's out there.
Yes.
He's on the edge.
And he can be crazy on the edge sometimes,
He's crazy on the edge. But at the same time, and I remember when he made the shift on war. That was actually, I remember it specific. Like the conversations that surrounded it, my friends that were like, dude, did you see this kind of thing?
When he stopped with the Nazi billboards every show.
Right, when he stopped with it. And so, like, when he changed his take, and he admitted flat out that liberals were right, and that while all that time that he spent, and this is a huge admission. I mean, think of the investment bias you're flushing down the toilet with this.
Oh, big time.
To say,
big time.
Listen, all those people I made fun of and mocked, including, by the way, censoring people like yours truly. I called the show, made it through. I called Glenn Beck's show once.
Oh, did you?
I made it through. He wanted people who were opposed to the war to explain why they were against the war.
Oh.
And he didn't believe that there was a good argument against it. So I called and I said, I'm not a liberal. I'm a conservative against the war. And they said, we're only looking for liberals. It was Stu. It was his assistant.
Yeah.
On the phone. And I'm like,
Stu,
what?
baby.
So he hung up the phone. And at the end, he didn't say liberals don't have a good argument. He said, there's no good argument.
Yeah.
And he said only liberals called. But so to have him change on war and to say, I was wrong about Iraq, I was wrong about this or that he promoted in the past, that's a big deal.
It is a big deal.
Yes.
It absolutely is. And so is this. I mean, what's going on here, I think, is a big deal. Where, they're talking about Tomi Lahren being removed from the blaze. Beck's trying to reinvent himself. He's burned too many bridges. This is what they were saying in terms of a former associate and someone that's close to the situation. The Blaze, founded 7 years ago in Dallas, once had offices in New York and 300 employees. Now the New York office is closed and the staff is half that size. While the number of paying subscribers, once to be 300,000, is kept secret, the Blaze is attracting 29 million unique visitors per month in 2014, or it had attracted that many. And only 8.8 million uniques in February of 2017. So, a massive drop.
Yeah.
We're talking the 21.2 million people.
They've lost like 3/4 of their, or
Yeah,
like
that's
1/3.
huge.
Yeah, over 1/3 of their listenership.
In fact, one of their only bright spots in terms of viewership would have been Tomi Lahren.
It would have been.
But what's more important, we have a minute and a half here before we break, but what's more important is why she got removed. Where there has been for a long time a conservative angle and argument, not a long time, but at least the last year or so, about the social justice-y, snowflakey liberals and how they always want to shut down free speech ideas. Well, now you have a situation. Now, this isn't indicative of all conservatives, but it does pose a good example of Tomi Lahren goes against the grain and says, I have a unique view on this. And the response to that isn't to be open-minded and to allow her into the camp and still to play around. They close her off and kick her out. And so I think it's just
That's identitarianism.
Very much.
To the extreme. I mean, I get it to a point if you say, hey, this is our brand. This is our brand is this. But when you sit there and you say, we're trying to work with people across the lines who can stop. I mean, if he can sit there and shake hands with Samantha Bee,
yes,
then why can't he do that with Tomi Lahren?
Well, and if part of the shtick is that this is what our brand is, part of that brand is calling people unimaginative and closed-minded for not allowing people to express their true beliefs of opinion. That's been something they're criticizing the opposite end of the spectrum for. So naturally, it shows a little bit of hypocrisy here. But I'm actually I'm happy Tomi Lahren did it. I'm glad she stuck with her guns.
I am too. You know, that she stuck with her guns. I went to her Twitter feed. It's interesting. You go to her Twitter feed, and she knows that she's up against the ropes.
Sure she does.
Invoking Jesus. Invoking the Holy Ghost. Talking about abortion.
That's right.
We live in interesting times. It's a birthday show. Give us a call, 616-656-1680. We'll be right back right after this with more Paleo Radio.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/PaleoRadio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio, live in studio, 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, and 102.5 in the greater Grand Rapids area.
And Spreaker, and iTunes, and YouTube.
And everything else you can imagine and more.
Yeah, everything you can imagine and more. All of the birthday wishes are coming true. And it's a matter of time on the rest of those. We're going to keep those private. We don't want to jinx ourselves, because of course we believe in that type of superstition.
Of course. Yeah. Like Michael Scott has said before on The Office, I'm not superstitious, but I am a little stitious.
So, speaking of someone who is more than a little stitious, is Alex Jones.
Yeah, he is. He tends to be a little stitious.
A little stitious. But I thought this was interesting. And listen, someone asked me recently, I said, you mentioned Jones pretty often. And I said, I actually monitor him. I know Right Wing Watch does, but Right Wing Watch, I think, is real. They're good for what they're useful for. Like, they'll find just the most kooky thing and share that. It's harder and harder to do with things that are conspiratorial, but kooky things to do with political statements, things of that nature. Because he's kind of evolved into like a Rush Limbaugh 2.0 type figure. He doesn't. Almost all of his commentary at this point is just purely political. But he posted a note, and I thought it was interesting. And he actually has a video. And I'd encourage people. I don't know if I've ever actually said this, but I would encourage you to
go check out
InfoWars. This one video. But he talks, it's a note to our listening, viewing, and reading audiences concerning PizzaGate coverage. Here's what he says. And this is by him. Okay, this is Alex Jones. We regret any negative impact our commentaries may have had on Mr. Elefantis, Comet Ping Pong, or its employees. He says, he talks about, he kind of gives a backdrop for it. And I think his backdrop's pretty accurate. It says, you got dozens of these stories and articles that come out about Podesta emails and these words in there about human trafficking or pedophilia and allegations in there to do with members of the Democratic Party. He said these stories were cited on social media. They went viral online, so people were talking about them all over the place. He said one person in the stories is this James Alefantis figure. He's the owner of Comet Ping Pong. He said, it's fair to say that Mr. Elefantis is a prominent individual who's been mentioned as a power player in Washington. Mr. Elefantis and his restaurant were mentioned in many stories published by a lot of different outlets, and he was quoted later denying any of this. But they had a discussion, I guess, over at InfoWars, and he said, we at InfoWars became a part of that discussion. We broadcast commentary about the allegations and the theory that the emails contained code words. We raised questions about information in Mr. Podesta's emails and the Comet Ping Pong restaurant. We believed at the time that further investigation was necessary. In December 2016, we disassociated ourselves from the PizzaGate claims and theories, a position we reiterated last month after being contacted by Mr. Elefantis. He says in hindsight he regrets it. And he apologized. He said, I apologize. He said, we were participating in a discussion that was being written about by scores of other outlets, but we relied on third-party accounts of alleged activities and conduct at the restaurant. We also relied on accounts of reporters who are no longer with us.
Yeah.
And there's some people who, I don't know the situation surrounding their departure, but I know they're gone, and people wondered what that was all about. But they said this, I want our viewers and listeners to know that we regret any negative impact our commentaries may have had on the employees. We apologize to the extent that they could be construed as negative statements about Mr. Elefantis or Comet Ping Pong. And we hope that anyone else involved in commenting will do the same. Talking about clarifying to the public, things like that. The last thing I'll say about it is this. The PizzaGate narrative, at least as concerning Mr. Elefantis and Comet Ping Pong, we've subsequently determined was based upon what we now believe was an incorrect narrative. Despite the fact that we were far from the genesis of this story, it's never easy to admit when your commentaries are based on inaccurate information. But we feel like we owe it to you, the listeners, viewers, and supporters to make that statement. and give an apology to you and to Mr. Elephantist when we do. We encourage you to hold us accountable. We improve when you do.
Yes.
And I'm sorry for that long reading. I mean, to go into it, but I mean, you don't see that very often from Alex Jones. Let's put it that way. You don't see a note saying, hey, by the way, this real saucy conspiracy theory, which, by the way, is still out there. You had 50 protesters, yesterday?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like 50 protesters in front of the White House demanding an investigation. I mean, people
More
are
PizzaGate.
still... Yeah, so, I mean, we haven't talked about it since... Well, I don't think we talked about it since the one episode where we said, that's the extent of anything
where we just covered it and we said, this is
there.
From fact to fiction, this is exactly what we've got.
That's it. But I thought it was just an interesting thing. And as someone who monitors groups like him and Paul Joseph Watson and others, that to see this, I said, you know what, that's worth a mention. And I thought it was interesting. We encourage you to hold us accountable. We improve when you do. There is a lot of room for that.
There's a lot of room
for that. You know,
Yes. Well, and yes, there is a lot of room for that. And that's the thing is, I'm very happy that Alex Jones took this angle on PizzaGate. The thing is, if he were to take this angle on many other topics that he's covered, he'd be writing more of these than he'd be covering the news. I mean, statistically,
especially to make up for past sins. I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
He can do the shtick he's doing now, which is just contemporary. I mean, and I'm serious about this. I would say probably 90% or more of what he does now is just contemporary talk radio. But the flow, the cadence, the temperament, it's similar to almost anything you're going to tune into on your AM dial on talk radio. It's not going to be quite what it was in the past. I mean, I haven't seen him make anything. Remember those old documentaries, man? Every documentary was CFR, Freemasons, Bilderberg, FEMA camps. Every single day.
Military interventions. Get your fallout shelters. Is he still selling fallout shelter equipment?
No, he is selling vitamins, basically. I mean, stuff for
he's
health
getting
and wellness.
You think he's getting moving into the geriatric version of himself, which is the take these pills for heart issues, and
that is kind of where he's at. He's
hitting the Limbaugh stride, like you're saying.
Well, Limbaugh's gotten into tea.
Yeah, well, that's old Limbaugh. Like early Limbaugh was the medicine whole health guy.
Yeah, the whole health guy.
And then it became LifeLock and protect your data.
Didn't Limbaugh do the Atkins diet?
He may have.
I don't know if he did or not. But yeah, same kind of thing. But that's how Jones is making the loot right now. He's doing stuff where you're selling shirts, selling gear, but also selling stuff like, for your brain supplements or whatever, all this kind of vitamin stuff to male vitality. It's got all the pictures of him with his shirt off.
Yes. You bring up a very good point about him having a style and a cadence that's like regular talk radio. Mm-hmm. The difference is that, and I know that he has watered himself down a little lately. A lot of that, I believe, has to do with him having his preferred candidate in the White House, so things aren't as panicky for him. But I think it's a very interesting point to bring up, because what you have is you've got him talking in that regular setting, but he also has amped up his rhetoric. He speaks at a more volatile level than even Rush Limbaugh does, but it's still delivered and packaged in a way that people are taking it in. Like, I'll tell you what, Rush Limbaugh's talk radio, he's not the first person to ever do it, but it still shows how influential it is. There's a reason why we prefer to have our show as a radio show.
And we
want it in that format because it's an easy way to retain deeper information and get into the deep diving of subjects and topics. But with Alex Jones, I think that it would be nice to see more of these. But I'll tell you what, I don't think we're not getting as often the chemtrails are killing us and GMOs make your, grow 8 toes type reports from InfoWars anymore.
No. But
I have a feeling like that's more because we're normalizing bad news as opposed to bad news is developing into good or decent news.
Yeah, I know that they view their show or their station or, as a news thing. And I went and I've looked at their staff writers. I said, well, who's writing for their staff? And who are their reporters? I mean, it looks like real hodgepodgey. Mishmashy. I mean, it kind of a Jimmy rigged show. I mean, it's got nice stuff, right? I mean, hey, I would love to have the equipment. I'd love to have the technology and stuff, and I'd love to have all the stations. I mean, he's obviously quite successful. It's not any kind of jab at him in his professional success, but simply to say when you go and you say, well, okay, I'm going to monitor this, the quote unquote reporters that he has on, they're not reporters. I mean, I guess they are. Because all you got to do really is be able to read script.
Yeah.
But I mean, the level of analysis is like, man, this is really bad.
But in a way, I think that is part and parcel of the plan. And I'm not saying like it's a whole bunch of, puppets and a puppet master type thing. But the idea of we get people who are young that are not, they don't have as much of a well-rounded idea of what the world is like. They're impressionable, and we can take this enthusiasm and use it in a way that is probably not the most beneficial for that person themselves. I think that's what InfoWars does. I mean, I don't think they're the worst offenders that there could possibly be, but I don't think that they're even midway level decent news.
I think this is funny. I catch these screenshots, right? I caught one screenshot where it made Alex Jones look like he was making the devil horn symbol with his hands, So I do all this kind of stuff where he's doing that, and I'll make these kind of satirical posts. But here's one, David Knight. He's one of the reporter guys. He's one of the not 20-somethings. But he wrote down, he's jotting down these notes, and he wrote, InfoWars, Project Dragney. And he forgot the T on it. He misspelled it. He actually there's a lot of misspellings. And it's only a couple words. Project Dragney. So I wrote this. Breaking. Is reporter David Knight of InfoWars turning whistleblower against Alex Jones, hiding their hacker troll connections in broad daylight? Google reveals that there's a lawyer named Dragney in Bucharest, Romania, the country Guccifer's from, the man responsible for the initial hack into Hillary's private server. It also just so happens to be that Bucharest is only 3 hours or so from Ramnesu Valsia. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, but AKA, and I can pronounce this one, Hackerville. According to Annan HQ, quote, the town only has a handful of real hackers, but the majority of the citizens are advanced cyber scammers. Story is developing, though, Joe.
Yes, we're going to wait for it to unfold a little bit more, but quite possibly that some sound logic you have there, JB.
Investigators are calling it the Spiel Memo.
Spiel Memo, love it. Stick around, folks. We're going to be right back. We'll be talking about Ted Koppel. We'll be talking about ballparks and YouTube rights changes. All that and more next.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Just got a Facebook mention here, Joe. On my timeline. It's true. Duran Murphy. Gotta love that guy. Posted this thing of, oh my gosh, man. Nacho Libre.
Yes.
And it says, hey, you, over there, your birthday. Hope it's the best.
It's the best.
Yes, it's the best.
Oh, man.
So I'll tell you, I love that movie. It may be one of my all-time favorite movies, in fact.
It is mine as well. I used to watch Nacho Libre in college. I swear I've watched that film over 40 times in my junior year of college. Come home every day, watch me some Nacho Libre.
And Joanna Nicole, she wrote, happy birthday, sweet friend. You're in my thoughts today and every day. And so thank you so much for the birthday wishes. You're welcome to call and wish Joe and myself a happy birthday. Joe's birthday is coming up in a few days. Mine's right now. Mine's today. Right now.
It is happening.
It's happening. This is a birthday present.
Yes.
From me to you, in fact. For my birthday, I would like to dedicate my efforts today to all of you because you're amazing. And because you really are what makes the show go round.
Aww.
And it does go round, Joe. It's not flat.
Yes, it goes around.
Our world goes around. Shaq is wrong.
Shaq is wrong.
Shaq is dead wrong. And by the way, if you'd like to call us on any of the topics, 616-656-1680.
Shaquille O'Neal is way wrong on this one. This is an article from IFL Science. It says Shaquille O'Neal thinks the earth is flat because it doesn't go up and down when he drives. This is by Jonathan O'Callaghan, happy dude of IFL Science. In a kind of funny but also, oh God, why sort of news, Former NBA basketball player and scientist in training, Shaquille O'Neal, has claimed the Earth is flat. How does he know this? Because it seems when he drives from coast to coast, we really hope he was joking. He says when he drives from coast to coast, it seems flat.
That was his dude. And did you hear it?
I did not hear it. I just once I clicked it open and started listening or seeing the dialogue, I thought this is not.
I believe that the Earth is flat. It's not round.
Yeah, that's what he said, and he said because he's driving, and the people on the show with him, man, it's like the laughter that you do when somebody tells a really uncomfortable joke, and it's not like you think it's necessarily funny, but you know it's a cue to laugh, kind of like.
You use the right word, necessary.
Yeah.
You just, we're moving along because socially you just keep laughing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, yeah, you must be kidding. That's crazy.
Yes.
And they're waiting for him to go, oh, yeah, and do a da-dumps. But he just keeps rolling.
Yes.
He keeps rolling with it.
He does. The great Shaq made comments on a show called The Big Podcast, which
and he swears in it, so we got to be careful with that.
Of course. Yeah. And this was back in February that has just been released. And it is genuine. It's verbatim quote of what he said. Quote, I drive coast to coast, and this blank is flat to me. I'm just saying. I drive from Florida to California all the time. It's flat to me. I do not go up and down at a 360-degree angle. I don't even know what that means.
Yeah, Mom.
And all that stuff about gravity. Have you looked outside Atlanta lately and seen all these buildings? You mean to tell me? I'm sorry.
That's why I was
Jeremiah's laughing at my facial cue, but whoa. He says, have you looked outside Atlanta and seen all these buildings? You mean to tell me that China is under us? China's under us? It's not. The world is flat.
Oh, my gosh, man.
And now, what
that
is
gravity stuff?
He's just not understanding. And I understand it. I mean, the guy's name's the Big Aristotle. Okay? Yeah. So with a nickname like that, it is probably important to understand why Aristotle is recognized and known. He's one of the first guys to predict that the Earth is a sphere. And you know what? It makes me wonder if people as a joke called him the Big Aristotle back in the day because of possibly him voicing some flat Earth theories. And it was like this joke. Like I think
a joke about
an ironic joke that he's the Big Aristotle, like he knows to predict it, which it could be because I have no idea where that nickname came from for Shaquille O'Neal, but it's true.
He says that the Earth is square.
What in the world?
So he believes it's got the four corners. Maybe that the skies are a scroll.
Yes.
If they got a long enough ladder, you know, we get some illegal immigration up to the heavens.
Oh, my goodness. And you know what? What would happen if all the human beings on the world walked to one corner? We tip it.
Who was the Who was the congressman that was afraid of the island? Island was it Guam?
I think it was Elijah Cummings? It was a Democrat.
No, it wasn't Cummings. No. It wasn't Cummings. It was a guy with a mustache. It was a guy with
it just seemed like something.
Mustache.
Seemed like something a guy with a peppered mustache
with a peppered
would
mustache,
say.
And his hair was kind of like, is it Carlton? He kind of has a Carlton haircut, a little, you know, and a little salt and pepper stash. But this guy, he was afraid kind of that, you know, it could flip. That the island is just kind of floating. It's like a lily pad. And if you just all go to one side of the lily pad, well, boy, you're completely hosed. Now, for Shaq and for flat earther folks, I mean, he could easily just simply say, pull something else out of his rear end and say, well, it's because we're on pillars.
Yeah, we're on a turtle shell, and it's a flat plane on turtle's back. They've already covered this. We already know. All we have to do is look into ancient texts.
It's on a turtle's back. We shared it. We shared a meme one time, a flat Earth meme, where the flat Earth was on the turtle's back.
Which, by the way, as we speak, I'm going to share on our PaleoRadio Facebook page that you guys can always go to and like because it is wonderful and fantastic. I'm going to share a new theory on how the dinosaurs became extinct based on the flat Earth theory, which basically shows a flat plane and the meteor hits it and tilts it and sends the dinosaurs into space. It's very scientific. It's very accurate. And I encourage you guys to take a look.
Yeah, so he believes that the Earth is square. And sadly, Shaq is not alone in this belief. His comments were in reply to similar musings from current Cleveland Cavaliers player Kyrie Irving, who said last month, quote, "This is not even a conspiracy theory. The Earth is flat. The Earth is flat." And he also, and this is according to the article, he also thinks he has the power to have an out-of-body experience when he dreams.
Yes, of course he does, because he believes that he's way bigger and more important in this earth day to day than he actually is. I mean, for real.
Right.
It's a perception thing. I mean, think about the big Disney, what is it? Is it? Maybe it's Epcot.
Yeah, the
where
Epcot,
it had
the dome.
the big spherical dome, right?
Yes.
Imagine an ant being on that. It's crawling on it. Now, an ant can
flat,
crawl in
bro.
all direction. Its perspective of how that is going to be flat, because even though it's rounded, it's such a small animal or small creature on such a large item that the perspective from that creature is going to be that it flattens out, because it doesn't have the capability of being far enough away to see that it's rounding. Which, that's like, there was a question about flat Earth, and one of my friends who was a flat Earth theologian or theorizer, however, I'm not going to give him the respect to say whatever it is, but they thought that the flat Earth theory was real, and they were talking about it, saying, well, you look at the world, in the world, you can't get one full picture of the Earth from satellites. That's always taking different images and putting it together. Yes, because the Earth is that big. A decent word for it would be ginormous. It's humongous. And so from our satellites that are within the Earth's gravitational orbit, we need to make a compilation of pictures because of its size. So naturally, if you're one little human being walking on the surface, it will appear flat. But if you go up into a raised building at all, you can see much farther than you probably would be able to if the Earth was flat. You can see it. You can also see where buildings end. I mean, there's mathematical equations to it. I won't take too long, but the quick one was, there's a man who said, if I'm at this certain point looking at Manhattan, I shouldn't see any skyscrapers, and I see them. Boom, proof, the Earth is flat. Well, they did the study that said from the angle he was at and where it was in the curvature of the Earth, which is like 8 degrees, that calculating from where he's at, you would only be able to see like a third of the top of the buildings based on the curvature of the Earth, and that's exactly what he saw. So even his proof itself was further proof that the Earth is a sphere.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, it's weird too, man, because all this stuff's out there, and in fact, we have a real easy guide. People can go back. There's an episode, I wish I knew what number, in our catalog, to go back on Spreaker. Find us at PaleoRadio Show. Make sure to follow us and subscribe to us on iTunes as well. You can find it there. But when you do, go back and check. We have one of our episodes actually has in the title something about how to know the flat Earth is wrong, like 10 easy ways to know or something like that. But there's a whole bunch of these dudes in the NBA, Joe.
Yes.
Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors.
Day-Day, you're a Michigan person. You're a Michigan State guy, but he's from Saginaw. Don't be disrespecting your schooling like that.
He said, I'm not saying I think it's flat or round. I don't know, but it could be.
That's endorsement enough.
Yeah. There's also Denver Nuggets player Wilson Chandler who tweeted, I agree with Kyrie.
Of course.
And then, of course, there's rapper B.O.B. There was an infamous tussle with NDT. And I encourage people, go and it's kind of fun. I don't think NDT's rap is I don't think the sound of it is nearly as cool. But that's kind of a given because B.O.B., that's kind of what he does.
Yes.
Like, he's a rapper. Like, so he's going to have his music's going to be better. He's got a better DJ rolling with him. You know, it doesn't sound quite so much like a Sesame Street Science rap kind of thing.
Yes.
But the Sesame Street Science rap destroyed B.O.B. That's the whole.
It did.
B.O.B. talks some serious smack. I mean, he's able to do this kind of, talking.
Well, he did a song called Flatline.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And then he was talking about how it's all a flat. The Earth is flat.
So NDT made a video in response to that.
Yes.
Responding to the Flatline video.
He actually had his cousin rap it for him, or his nephew rap it for him. But he had a response on Larry Wilmore's show that I think was the most notable one, which is when he said that the Earth is flat and did the whole drop mic thing and all that good jazz. But no, what you brought up was a good point about saying that there's a lot of people in the NBA and everything that have these beliefs. And I'm not going to go crazy and say the word's dangerous because it's not necessarily dangerous. In a way, it's playful. But we should take notice that people that make it through our college sham game that is college sports. And I'm a huge fan, but I'll tell you what, we could have a whole segment on that. But they make it through that sham game, and the idea is that what they get as a trade-off is a scholarship, right? And there's a lot of players that are in the NBA that have degrees from the schools they graduated from, and they're carrying flat earth theory through that. Then those people are not educating them in any way, shape, or form, period. So let's think about that system in general, too. How in the world can you get people leaving our prestigious universities thinking the earth is flat, or it's even an open discussion? It's ridiculous.
The fact that there's just so many high-profile people in the NBA.
Yes.
That in a sport. And I mentioned this before. I said, why the NBA?
Yes.
And you were like, well, it's one of the dumber sports. I mean,
if they started this polling in the NFL, I would not be surprised at all that at least 15 to 20% of people believe it's a question about the earth being flat or not. Stick around, folks. We'll be right back. PaleoRadio is live and on the air.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact PaleoRadio at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of 'em, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
If you love Paleo Radio, you can support the show by going to patreon.com/Paleo Radio, and all of your wildest dreams will come true.
Yes, and I'll tell you, we love payment in rubies, jewels, gold and silver and pearls.
Old school pirate booty.
Yeah, old school pirate booty. You got to make sure all of the payment methods you can find out by finding us on Patreon at Paleo Radio. You got to check it out. It's tons of fun. Become a subscriber. Now listen, Generation Z, Joe.
Gen Z.
This is by Peter Vanderswet. He's a freelance writer, and he wrote a piece called "The Post-Millennial Generation Should Worry Democrats." And I thought it was an interesting score. I took out some of the, in the notes anyway, some of the stuff that's not so much informative as much as it is just simply kind of the garbling of an individual who very much prefers one ideological position over another. So I'm saving you from some of it, but it's a good piece. It's not bad. But on deck, Generation Z, the most conservative generation in 70 years. Born between 1995 and 2010, they're fiscally conservative, staunchly supportive of personal freedoms, and this would include, by the way, abortion. This would be your Tomi Lahren stuff right here. And strong on national security, including counterterrorism and cybersecurity, with a hint of isolationism. They don't fit the mold for either political party in the current form.
I believe that to be true.
That's pretty similar to our show, actually. Kind of.
A little bit.
A little. I mean, we would at least be attractive to people of this persuasion.
I think one thing our show does better than others is that we give people a fair shake in terms of even if the idea is, even if I consider the idea to be wildly outlandish, I still believe in the process of talking it out and going through the ideas. And I think that people that have negative feelings about shows that try to toe the middle of the line is because they feel like they still don't get access to some understanding. And I think our show does a decent job of that, at least.
I do too. And I know that when I was talking to somebody, I'm sorry for kind of stumbling over this, but I was talking to somebody about it, and they mentioned that. They said, your show, you and Joe, you guys are just, you try really hard, and you're successful at it in order to give people a fair shake. And in the modern landscape here, and we've lamented this fact. We actually have an episode about this. It's one of our favorite segments. Both of us would agree on this about Best of Enemies.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Good
Buckley.
stuff.
So to say that people are really intrigued generally, it seems like our culture is very intrigued by this very antagonistic, let's fight, let's duke it out kind of thing. And that's just not the way that we roll. And I'll tell you, it's interesting to see. I'd be interested to see how Generation Z, how they view media, and if they like what kind of preference they have, the rock'em sock'em type stuff, or something that simply lays it out and says, choose for yourself.
Yeah. Well, in the rock'em sock'em robot style, is a style that kind of, it assumes that after this argument is over, after this debate is over, that we've settled it, and now we're going to move on to another thing. We're going to go settle another thing, right? And it's kind of like, we have all these problems to deal with. We're going to pick one. We're going to spend 5 minutes on it. We're going to have an idea figured out by the end of that time. And that's not actually how you persuade people. And what are we trying, when I say persuade or manipulate, what I'm talking about that is that word gets a bad rep, but what are we doing when we're sharing our ideas? We're trying to manipulate behaviors in a way that tells people, this idea that I have, I think is a good idea. I think you can put some manpower behind it and it can come to some good results for people. And I just think that there's an angle that we can use for that on our show, and there's an angle that more talk radio personalities could use, and the media in general, about having these discussions in a way that's a long format, because that's where you get to real hard answers. There's a reason why, basically, I guess what I'm saying is there's a reason why guys like Dave Rubin seem to be having more success with just an hour-long sit-down show where he doesn't really challenge them on anything they say.
He doesn't.
He doesn't. He sits there and he's like, I'm literally a human word pincushion. Stick these in me for an hour and a half. But people really like it because you get people, whether you agree with it or not, they get to, in long form, explain themselves. Joe Rogan experiences the same thing. He sits down with one person for 3 hours, and over 3 or 4 million people watch every episode. Over 3 hours. There's got to be something to the content there. And I think that's why we wanted to expand our show for 2 hours.
And these are digital natives. And this is a weird thing to think about. I mean, growing up, I didn't have cell phones.
That's right.
I watched, what's the name of that? Kung Fury. If people haven't seen Kung Fury, you got to watch it. It's the most intense half an hour. And Joe, you're the one, aren't you? Yes, you told me about this movie.
Kung Fury's wild.
Yes, Kung Fury, and I mean this, Kung Fury is by far the most intense 30-minute film I've ever seen of anything. Hasselhoff's in it. It's a great,
an epic ride.
It is epic. But I lived in a day and age before even the phone on that movie, where they kind of harken back to this old 70s or 80s telephone, and it's hilarious, where it's like, this is the future of innovation and all that. I remember cell phones that looked like that, and it said, this will make it possible for people to talk on phones in their cars.
Yeah,
and that's the joke about it. And he gave it, of course, to people. He went back in time. It's a crazy story, but he went back in time and gave it to people who don't even have cars or electricity or anything, and he handed it to them and then went forward in time.
And left them.
Left them with this thing.
Yes.
But I remember when stuff like that was being sold for like $500.
Yeah.
Like really expensive.
Yeah, I remember when having the cordless phone in the house was like the biggest deal there could be. I mean, we're not that old. We're sitting here, opining about the older days, uphill both ways to answer the phone type stuff.
Did they make you, your parents, did they have new rules for the wireless phone? That because the old phone, you were
doors.
Stuck. Yeah, no shut doors.
Yeah, we had a long phone. We had in the house I grew up in, we had an island in the middle of the house, basically an island wall. So if you walked in, you were in like an office area. To the right was right into the living room, and straight ahead was in the kitchen, and it went in a circle. The phone was there on that circle, and the cord was long enough where you could take it and you could walk around and be in the other side of the room. But we had rotary phones until I was like 10, bro. Mm-hmm. Rotaries, not even the punch dials. The pull it back and, and you had to do the whole entire thing. Someone picked up the phone while you were in the middle of a dial. It cut your call off on the other line. So we used to have that battle, an epic battle with my sisters as a kid.
I remember,
trying to tattle on mom, and you're trying to secretly dial the phone because, if they pick up, they close off your line.
Well, I think it's hilarious, too. Like, I remember just even being on the other line.
Yes.
Like, the fact that we can say that you could be on the other line, pick up the phone, and try to get away with it. I used to try. I'd be, like, wondering what people are talking about, and you'd always be able to tell. Right?
Oh,
yes.
You
can almost always tell if another phone in the house had picked up and somebody's listening in.
Oh, you always know. You could, right? And it's just silently sitting there. Yes, of course you can. So
yeah,
you can definitely recognize it. That is for sure.
So like those are things, but these people, they're digital natives. They have never experienced life without the internet.
No, that it's a totally new experience.
Yeah, so the internet, interconnectivity, all of this stuff. This is the water that these fish have been born into. This is their native environment. They've never needed to ask anybody for directions. I mean, think about that.
Yeah.
That's just weird.
Yeah,
that's
they've
really
never
weird.
They've
to
never
look at
had
a phone book.
Phone book. That's just littering at this point. That Bill Maher had a joke about that. Throwing the phone book on the lawn at this point is littering.
They still have it.
Yeah. Why are we even doing this?
Why? But the world is open to these people. They have all these diverse forms of media. They're driven thinkers, according to the article. Driven thinkers attracted to fast-paced data and willing to sift through the noise to find evidence backing their own ideologies and beliefs. Generation Z has never known life without the threat posed by radical Islamic terrorism and has had no experience of the world where the United States was not at war.
Wow.
These are a number of factors that are quite interesting. But with these people, they're growing up in a day and age, YouTube and social media and everything else. And one of the quotes that was really stood out to me, it said this: old mainstays of conventional politics are going to be pushed to the wayside as these digital natives gravitate to traditional positions from both parties. Socially, both conservative and liberal, fiscally conservative, issue-based, and meritocratic, they tend toward individualism versus collectivism while still motivated to effect social change.
That is a unique perspective and position to be in.
It is.
Yes, it is. It says, in polling data collected by the Hispanic Heritage Foundation, including 50,000 high school students aged 14 to 18 just prior to the election, first-time voters presented a 46% to 31% divide in favor of the Republican candidate, with primary concerns being education, gun rights, and health care. That's a surprise. When expanded to reflect their generation as a whole, Trump still maintained a 14-point advantage over Clinton at 34% to 20%.
Remarkable.
Yes.
So, and this is where we get, and there's a good reason for this. We talked about the millennials. It was the thing that everybody's talking about, still is. Major time movers and shakers in this past election with Bernie and company and all of that.
Yes.
But there are people coming up in the wake, and it seems like this might be a counterbalancing force to these generations might have some issues with each other.
Well, and I think political thought is an awful lot like clothes and style. As you get older, it changes, and it changes per your demographic and your age group. So we're going to see how this plays out. Generation Z's got a long, long way to go before they get a developed thought. Stick around, folks. We're going to have comedian Jerry Jaffe on at 11 o'clock. It's going to be a fantastic good time. Do not want to miss it. We're going to have that and much, much more in Paleo Radio. Stick around.
You are now entering Paleo Radio.
Welcome to Paleo Radio with your hosts Jeremiah Bannister and Joe Elder.
Welcome back to hour number 2 of the most wonderful, amazing show that's live in studio on WPRR at 10 a.m. to 12 a.m. on Mondays. This is Joe Elder and Jeremiah Bannister of Paleo Radio.
It's true.
Yes.
2 birthday boys this week.
Yes, 2 birthday boys. How fantastic.
Oh, man. Yeah, we got it. We should have come up with something. I wish we would have had more foresight on this to say, listen, it would be a lot of fun to meet up with some listeners, in fact, maybe this week. To meet up, we've done it before.
Yeah, we have.
We had a couple events in the past. I know there was one that took place at Founders, and there was one. I wish I remembered. It was Studio something. We had a listener who was a chef, and a fantastic chef, by the way. Made an amazing cake. We had kind of a Last Supper picture. Got the in the middle with the Jesus sovereign hand kind of in the middle. But anyway, it was a bunch of fun. It would be fun to organize something like that. But my birthday is today. Joe's birthday, what is it? Is it Wednesday? Thursday? Thursday. So Joe's birthday is on Thursday. We're both very, very, very young.
Yeah, that's all, and that's all we need to say about that.
No, we're very young. No wrinkles, no gray hairs, none of that stuff. Just a good phone number you can call, 616-656-1680.
That's right. And we want to bring on a special guest. His name is Jerry Jaffe. He is a podcaster. He is the leader, the co-host, or not co-host, the host of the Comical Heathen podcast. You can find that at comicalheathen.podbean.com. Welcome, Jerry Jaffe. How are you?
Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the show. We really, really appreciate it.
No, I would love to say happy birthday, but unfortunately you're over 12 years old, and that's my cutoff.
There you go. Is that also the cutoff for spankings?
There's no cutoff for spankings.
That's right. Oh, man. Well, yeah, thank you for joining us on the show. We just wanted to get to know you a little bit better, Jerry, for all the listeners of PaleoRadio. You do have a podcast, the Comical Heathen podcast. How's that going?
Well, it's going well. I've just started releasing it a few months ago. I'm only up to episode 6. I got episode 7 in post-production right now, so it should come out in the next couple of days.
Great.
And, it's interviewing comedians or other interesting people about religious satire, and then, sharing what their thoughts with the world.
Yeah. Do you have any examples or anything? I mean, not to give away too much, but just some interesting topics you guys have covered thus far. Just so you know, talking about religion is not faux pas on this show either. So you can feel free.
Well, what I would my hope, especially if I can keep this thing sustain it, is that it combines two topics that a lot of people like to talk about: religion and comedy.
Yes.
And I don't really know another podcast in particular that sort of that focused on that intersection. One thing, though, and Joe and I have done comedy a few times over the years, is most of the comedians wonder if doing religious satire on the road for your road warriors divides the room or not. So that's a topic that everyone wants to talk about. Everyone has an opinion about whether you should or shouldn't do religious satire when you're on the road.
What are your thoughts on that? I mean, just tease us here, man. What are your thoughts on that? Because we talk about this stuff, too. I mean, actually, Joe, that was one of the things, we have private talks about his gigs that he's going to do. Right. And he has some lines that he tossed out there.
Yes.
and there, I remember one time, the first time, in fact, he ever did it. I have it on video.
Tell this.
And it was hilarious.
Yeah, it did divide the room.
It divided the room. You could hear the division.
No,
you could feel it.
Yeah, and I think there's tact involved. But before I think about it, what are your thoughts on that, Jerry? Yeah. I mean, do you think it divides room? Or
my thought goes in two directions. The first is, if there's a professional comedian out there who has an act, and he or she is not doing religious satire, then there's no reason to force it just for forcing it. It's got to be part of your act. But I will say, from a completely opposite direction, I do go to a lot of open mics. I'm based in Cleveland, and we've got a pretty lively comedy scene. There's open mics every night somewhere you can go to. And you'll often hear younger, inexperienced comedians try religious satire and not split the room, but actually just freeze the room.
Yes.
No reaction whatsoever, and then blame the audience.
Of course.
And I would just like to suggest the possibility that your joke might not be funny. It's still a requirement. You can't just do religious satire without the humor part being part of it.
How are you going to get comedians on there if you tell them that their jokes aren't funny, Jerry? No, I'm just...
Well, I bring on the comedians whose jokes are funny.
There you go.
That's one of the benchmarks.
Yes, that would make perfect sense. And I also think, too, that it is, when you say it's not that funny, it could be the craft of it. I mean...
Yes, that's what I'm referring to, of course.
there's a ton of work that can be put into one joke.
Right.
Just me personally, I have jokes that I've had the premise for 2 years that have changed every month. That joke changes.
Yes.
It's just being adapted and changed and molded and pulled apart and put back together. And I think that if you can find the right premise, but you have to have a way to deliver it, especially if you're talking about religion or politics, you have to be able to kind of lay it out to people in a way that's comfortable. Because making edgy decisions and edgy jokes right off the bat, I think, turns people.
Well, one thing I've noticed, and I try to do this, but I've noticed some professionals I admire, it's like Mark Maron will do this, just for example, and that is sometimes start the bit by making it clear you're talking about extremists.
Yes.
So instead of just saying, what's wrong with these wacky Christians, then you say, like, what's wrong? Here's something I've noticed about this extreme version of Christianity or this extreme person. So you're not so the people in the room feel like you're not talking about them now.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're all on an inside joke about somebody else who's not in the room, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that is a great point. Do you feel like politics is the same angle? I see people that are younger in the game or even older in the game are still trying it that seem to fail with political satire or political jokes. Do you think it's kind of the same thing or a little different?
Well, I'm sure it's approximately the same thing. I think that with stand-up comedy, comedians have something working for them, but as you refer to craft, it's something you got to kind of figure out over a couple of years, and that is who goes to see comedy. Like, your extreme creationists don't usually go to see comedy. And, like, your alt-right Nazis don't usually go to see comedy. So, again, if you can keep in mind who is actually in front of you, you can keep in mind who they'll laugh at.
That's
so
true.
You don't have a bunch of brown shirts at your stand-up gigs, huh?
I mean, no. I don't know what goes on in other places.
Yeah, I was going to say, who knows what happens in the Bible Belt there.
Can I give you a tease?
Absolutely.
Yeah, do it.
Please.
One of my interviews that's already published is with the great Steve Hofstetter.
Oh, yes.
And he's great, and he's not shy about doing religion or politics.
He's a bold man.
And he just tells this story, which you can hear on the podcast, but I'll tell the short version, of going to a one-nighter at a bar, and he's hanging out in the bar, getting to know some of the people. And some guys at the bar show them that they are card-carrying members of the KKK.
Wow.
And that affected what he did that night.
Well, of course,
once he discovered.
Of course it would. Just so people know, too, Steve Hofstetter, this guy has a reputation among comics as being a guy who just shuts down people who are heckling him.
Yes.
Oh, yes. It's notorious. He's got YouTube videos of just him time and time again just making a fool out of people who heckle him. But
his YouTube channel collectively has tens of millions of hits as well.
Absolutely. He's very talented.
When you were talking about tact and saying, there's a way to deal with it, there's this group, a burlesque troupe called Super Happy Fun Time. Okay. And they're like way over the line. I'm talking like it is just so bad. But they have this song because they play this music and they have a live band and it's just hilarious. But they're playing this song about how everywhere they go, people can deal with the most grotesque, offensive, over-the-line stuff. But the moment you bring up a baby Jesus joke, all of a sudden they come up afterward and they're like, hey, I could deal with that, but... And so they talk about it. They have an entire song dedicated to this phenomenon that they experience by saying terribly offensive things, way over the line, and yet what upsets people is when it comes around to Jesus or religion.
Again, I don't know that group. It sounds fantastic. You must immediately take me to one of their shows.
Yes, it is great.
Absolutely. I will say, too, though, I have 5 times in the past month gone on stage and done baby Jesus jokes and gotten laughs. Mm-hmm. So it does depend on craft and figuring the jokes out and having the right audience. Like I've noticed just for myself, I tend to do the best with college audiences. So I do shows in Kent or Bowling Green or Ann Arbor, and
that's interesting, actually.
They love me.
Yeah. Which is a little different than from things that Jerry Seinfeld has been saying in Rogan about doing comedy at colleges. Have you noticed any of that, or do you know anybody that's had issues with some of their content going to colleges at all? Or
this is something I have a very strong opinion about because you'll hear a lot about the side that you're describing. I teach at a college in Cleveland, and I bring comedians in all the time. I just had Sean Lynch last week. If you don't know him, he's great. But and I told him, and I told the audience, say whatever you want. And I have never, tomorrow, it might come tomorrow, but I have never had a student, a staff member, a parent, or anyone complain about any R-rated comedian that I've brought to campus. I think that this, it almost seems like fear, but this concern about college campuses being too PC is exaggerated in pop culture. Milo shows up at some campus and there's a protest. Well, people should be allowed to speak, I suppose, but people have a right to protest. But 99% of the campus didn't even show up. So now you're going to say the 100 protesters who shouted down Milo represents all of colleges in America?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's plenty of speakers that went to Saginaw Valley that I didn't even know were there because I was in the dorm room getting high playing Halo. So
yeah,
I had no clue who was even coming in to speak.
Yeah, so apathy way outstrips political correctness on college campuses.
But have you had anybody so daring? And we can talk about this afterward. I hate bringing it up, but I already started. I invested already. It's too far.
Let's do it.
Yes.
Rape jokes like Chappelle. I just watched Chappelle's Netflix special, and on that Netflix special, he tells some jokes that a number of people found to be obvious. That was a divider, right? That was a divider. And so when we get back, we're coming down toward the end of the break. We're going to put you on hold here.
Okay.
We're talking to Jerry Jaffe. And as I said, I hate doing that, bringing that question up. We'll bring that up again when we come back from our break. So we're talking to him, podcaster, hilarious guy, teaching at a place of higher learning in Cleveland. So super excited. We'll be back with him right after this break. Don't go anywhere. 616-656-1680 for more Paleo Radio.
Love Paleo Radio? Join the club. Support our work by visiting patreon.com/Paleo Radio today.
Back to Eagle and Dragon.
Two quick things. We have confirmed that it was the Speakeasy Lounge that we, in 2012, that we had the birthday party.
The Speakeasy Lounge.
The Speakeasy Lounge
the good
is
stuff.
where we had that birthday party. Also wanted to say thank you to Mel Rice and Gregory Vining for the happy birthday wishes. Mel Rice said she would love to call the show, but she's all snotty and nasty and gross, and she's afraid that we would lose listeners. We've got millions of them, so I mean, come on.
Millions upon millions.
And millions and millions of these
Something wrong with the algorithm that doesn't show those numbers, but they're there, folks.
It keeps us in triple digits. I don't really know why that is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's a big scam. It's a big conspiracy. All right, we've got a guest on the line, funny man, Mr. Jaffe. You still there with us?
Yes.
Yeah, we lost you for a second. We're sorry we dropped you on accident.
It happened.
It happened.
At least we did it on when we were off the air, right? So it seemed very smooth. Very smooth transition.
In fact, no one would have even known if you hadn't said.
That's right. You know what?
I outed myself.
That's almost like it's almost like being on stage and you miss your line, but if you just carry on, no one knows. They only know when you stop the whole thing and say line, right?
Yeah, wow.
Anyways, moving forward amicably. We were discussing Chappelle's last episode, Dave Chappelle's. And again, for folks who are just joining us, Jerry Jaffe is a comedian and host of the Comical Heathen podcast and also is an educator in the Ohio area. But we were talking about Dave Chappelle and what was going on with his jokes. Particularly, he told some jokes that some folks found insensitive around rape. And what do you think is, number one, is there such thing as a funny rape joke?
Yes, there definitively is such a thing as a funny rape joke. It does not, of course, mean that rape itself is funny. It's tremendously horrible in every way imaginable. But the reason I say yes to is there a funny rape joke is because if a comedian tells a rape joke and people laugh, then it's a funny rape joke.
Absolutely.
Now, if a comedian tells a rape joke and someone in the audience is offended, I think that person is allowed to be offended. That's the First Amendment goes in both directions, I like to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So when you do rape or politics or religion, you've got to accept that that the First Amendment goes in both directions.
Sure. And do you think that this is one thing that I kind of I like to tell people about comedy. And again, I'm new to this as well. I've only been doing it a few years, and I really like to look at people like yourself and others who have been in and been doing or playing the game a little bit longer than me and kind of learning from it. But one thing I have kind of collected from these shows is that you've got a lot of people that may be offended, but you have to develop your craft. You have to make your jokes really stick, but laughing is involuntary. If you can bring out irony or you can show something in a way that makes people laugh, it is truly funny, and intent is the most important thing. Like for Chappelle, his intent isn't to make fun of people that are victims of rape, right? His intent is to take something that is such a hard subject and flip it on its head, which is essentially what comedy is about, is in a lot of ways being self-deprecating too. So anyway, what do you think?
Probably too abstract for a radio show, but I think the best emblem of comedy is that weird duck-rabbit drawing, that it looks like a duck and it looks like a rabbit at the same time.
Is it like like a jackalope, but a duck rabbit?
Yeah.
It's like an optical illusion drawing.
Yes.
So all jokes have multiple meanings, and that's part of what makes you laugh, is that your brain is processing two or more meanings at the same time. And if your duck rabbit, if the duck is rape and the rabbit is a joke about rape, some people aren't going to be able to participate in the multi meanings. They're only going to be able to participate in the one potentially offensive meaning.
Yes.
And a lot of times maybe even rooted just in their personal experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, somebody they know, somebody themselves. Right. And listen, Chappelle, I think some of the people that were that knee-jerk reaction to, oh my gosh, did he just say that, you know, about the pat on the vulva, did he superpower guy, which is hilarious, by the way. You know, but they didn't listen further, some of them, because he then goes on in a very serious moment talking about his views about feminism.
Yeah,
he talks about his views about rape and his views about how men should treat women. And it's like, once you hear, like, so you have a comedian who says something that's quite obviously funny with the intention of not being mean, and then follows that up with a very serious thing, with a very obvious intention of saying his actual beliefs about it, and people kind of glossing over that part and taking very seriously his comedy, but kind of laughing off his serious part.
Yeah, well, it's hard to do both. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I'm not saying anything wrong with trying, but I'll tell you what it reminds me of. I consider myself a pretty big fan of Bill Maher.
Yes.
But I've watched his show every week for 10 years, and every once in a while he'll be interviewing someone, and if Bill Maher says something serious and then he makes a joke, he's a comedian. But if he says something serious and his guest makes a joke, he'll scold them.
I am with you.
He'll say, "No, Senator, I'm asking you a serious question right now." And so it's hard to navigate being funny and being serious at the same time.
I think it is. I also think it provides a crutch. I'm doing it right now. I talk about politics, and I am a comedian. And it is a crutch in a way that I think Jon Stewart used the same crutch, where he's making political analysis, and I understand his angle of it, where he'd make these jokes where, you know, he's like, I'm on after puppets who do crank phone calls.
Yeah,
you know, like, why are you comparing yourself to me? Yeah. But when you're talking about media and influence, Jon Stewart was epically huge in terms of media influence in politics for younger people.
Yeah.
I would make a baseless prediction that will never be proven, that if he was still on the air, Clinton would have won.
That may be true.
Possibility.
I don't think that's wildly off base. Right. But the point being that comedians do use this, where, and Bill Maher, like you said, he will too, where making his serious points, and when he wants his serious points to get through, he's being an intellectual. But when it's time to lighten it up, then, I'm a comedian, or if he gets called on something, then it falls back to, I'm a comedian.
It kind of sounds like when people like Bill O'Reilly get called out, that he'll say, well, I'm an entertainer.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
And he'll do that on Mar's show. Yep. Like, that's actually where I'm hearkening back actually to that interview, where and all the audience is kind of like, but it's the same. It's close. It's similar. It's that same delicate balance that people are trying to strike, I think.
Well, Rush Limbaugh will often play the I'm a comedian card when one of his comments goes way off base.
Yes, he will.
As well, yes.
He did that with the Sandra Fluke stuff.
Right.
You know, she's a slut, right? That whole thing. That was his whole Sandra Fluke deal. But yeah, I think that these two topics are fantastic topics to be covering, especially with the merger of politics and comedy. But
well, in the 70s and 80s, there used to be this thing called a public intellectual, someone like William F. Buckley or Christopher Hitchens, who was just a well-educated, well-traveled person who could communicate complicated ideas on television. And in the year 2017 in America, comedians are the only public intellectuals.
We've talked about that on the show about public intellectuals. We mentioned Buckley earlier in the show today. We were talking about we were saying one of our favorite segments that we've ever done. We went and watched the movie Best of Enemies. And it was a powerful documentary. Right. And we went and we watched it and we talked about it. It's one of our favorite segments we've ever had because we lament the loss of this. Yes. And how that's played out. And in a way I agree with you that our comedians now, those are the people who are now your public intellectuals.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look up a YouTube video of William F. Buckley debating Woody Allen.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Or
That's
him
fantastic.
and Noam Chomsky.
Yeah.
Him and early socialist Christopher Hitchens, which he honestly tears apart. I've watched that. But you're really talking our language in terms of that public intellectual, because here at Paleo Radio we do like to kind of subscribe to the idea of being a well-rounded intellectual, where your ideas and interests don't carry on in one area, but they merge into a multitude of different sets and mediums. And I think that's really what we need more of, is just the average well-rounded person who just knows a little bit of something about everything, or not everything, just some
there's
things.
Also it's kind of a stereotype or cliche that you have to be smart to be a comedian. And
not true.
I think what happens is, like, on average, you probably have to be smart to be a comedian, but that doesn't mean every comedian is a Einstein, trust me.
Yes, that's right. And I think, too, it's about pattern recognition, right? Like, there's something to a basketball player or an athlete that really has a sense of the game and knows where to be on the court, but they're just a terrible day-to-day student.
Right.
But they do seem to have this intuition about understanding the game and where to be, and more than just a bodily kinesthetic area. They know how the game works, But also, it just goes to the point of pattern recognition. There's many comedians that notice a pattern and say, okay, A plus B equals C, and I know how this works, so I'm going to be able to use this formula to be a funny person.
Well, and just like a great piano player spends years practicing, I think that's where the young or beginner comedian should accept. You're going to spend 2, 3, 4, 5 years just learning how to tell jokes. Like, if you don't work on it early, you won't get the payoff later of the pattern recognition you're talking about.
Absolutely.
My second year doing comedy, and I was open mics and contests and things, and it just dawned on me, I will never get on Letterman with the jokes I'm doing now, and I retired all of my jokes that day.
Really?
And I said, surely I know more about writing jokes now than I did 2 years ago. Any joke I would write now would be better than any joke I've ever written.
Yeah, that's actually pretty eye-opening for me myself. I might have to take some of that advice. We have about a minute left, and if you care to share this, if you don't, that's okay. But I remember the first time I met you, you were explaining constructing a joke to me, and you used a metaphor of an accordion. Would you want to share that at all, or is that a trade secret of yours?
No. It's thank you for remembering that and bringing it up. To put it quickly, in my opinion, there's many ways to write jokes and become a better comedian. But here's what I do. I write a joke, like I write it out, I figure it out, I learn it. Then I go on stage and I do it naturally. So it might be a little paraphrased or whatever. And while I'm doing that, then I add tags and improvisation to it. So the joke gets longer, like stretching out an accordion. And then as it gets longer, I figure out what I can cut out, like what's actually necessary or funny. And then it gets squeezed down to a short version again, but the short version is what's actually funny. And then I repeat that. So to me, a joke is like expanded and stretched out and then cut down and made sharp back and forth like an accordion.
Yeah. That's great.
I love that methodology, man.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, Jerry, thank you very much for joining us. It was a great 2 segments.
Thanks for including me.
Yeah, we're really happy to have you on. We're going to have you on again.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Happy birthday, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry.
All right. All righty.
All right, Jerry Jaffe, comedian and host of the Comical Heathen podcast. You can find it at comicalheathen.podbean.com. Stick around, folks. We're going to be right back with more Paleo Radio.
Now back to Joe and Jeremiah.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio. Here in studio at 95.3 FM, 1680 AM, and 102.5 in the greater Grand Rapids area.
And make sure to give us a call, 616-656-1680. We just had somebody give us a call, and we weren't able to grab the phone in time. We sincerely apologize. Racing around, making some shift changes. Mid-show.
Mid-show shift change.
Mid-show shift change. That's kind of a hard one to say. Almost need to use the old sensor buzzer there, bro.
Yes.
The old beep on that.
Oh, yes. The old, yes.
It was close.
I thought of one other thing, too. Before we get too far away from this, I want to remind everyone, too, for Jerry Jaffe's comedy podcast, The Comical Heathen, it is also on iTunes and Stitcher. So you don't have to go to comicalheathen.podbean.com. You can also go to iTunes and Stitcher.
And we don't want to discourage you from doing that, of course.
No,
we want to encourage you to go to that site.
And write a review.
Yeah, and write a review. Make sure to do that and write a review for us. Find us on iTunes. Find us on Spreaker as well. You can find us on Spreaker at Paleo Radio Show. Make sure to subscribe. Make sure to follow, comment, like, heart, and review. And, of course, share with all of your friends on social media. But, dude, FBI, and this actually started last week when we were on the air. Because while we were on the air, Tomi was being interviewed.
Yes.
He was being interviewed by Congress while we were on the air. And when we were off, we got this revelation that the FBI has an open investigation into Trump's Russia ties. And this is according to the New York Times, Matt Apuzzo, Matthew Rosenberg, and Emery Hudeman, I believe. The FBI director, James Comey, took the extraordinary step on Monday of announcing that the agency is investigating whether members of President Trump's campaign colluded with Russia to influence the 2016 election. Mr. Comey's testimony before the House Intelligence Committee created a treacherous political moment for Mr. Trump, who has insisted that, quote, Russia is fake news that was cooked up by his political opponents to undermine his presidency. Mr. Comey placed a criminal investigation at the doorstep of the White House and said officers would pursue it, quote, no matter how long it takes.
Yes. So that is quite a revelation.
Yeah.
For a long time, the FBI was withholding if they were actually investigating at all. Now, it isn't normal to their code of conduct to not announce it, but I think that there's a little – I mean, obviously there was some politics to be played, but Democrats had a feeling that if they were protecting in any sort of way, or what their view was of protecting Donald Trump's campaign by not going public with the investigation, that it would be disingenuous, seeing how during the election process with Hillary Clinton, it was a very open and public investigation into her dealings and her emails. So that's neither here nor there with what the FBI was doing. But Comey did make a point to bring it up and say, normally we don't disclose when we are investigating different people, but unless it comes to certain circumstances, we'll feel the need. So a lot of people feel like the FBI was doing kind of a dirty game. I don't think so. I think they were sticking to their guns of we don't tell people who we're investigating until we absolutely have to.
Right. And with this right here, Mr. Comey testifying for more than 5 hours said there was no evidence that Russian hackers had changed any votes in the election.
Absolutely.
Said the FBI was, quote, investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russian efforts. He said the existence of an investigation did not mean the FBI would ever prove wrongdoing. And it's interesting to bring up Hillary, because when they brought that up, I mean, people were furious about
lock her up, right? That came directly from thinking she's done. They're looking into her, which means there's something.
Yeah, and then, well, it's not going to happen. And so, like, there's a lot of people, I mean, the country right now, there's a lot of people right now really sad that the FBI didn't lock Hillary up and that investigation, well, I thought it was open. I thought you were still doing that. And doesn't that mean that it's going to result in what I want?
Yes.
And it didn't. For a lot of Americans, it may be the same this way. It may be different.
Yeah, I think that's a great point to make. And this is also why the FBI doesn't announce they're investigating someone, is for this very reason. They look into somebody, they find out that nothing's there, and they didn't tell anybody they were looking into it. There is no damage to their reputation. Now, I understand there's a lot of people that are probably in their car yelling and screaming, well, Donald Trump's different, da-da-da-da-da. But the point being is that the FBI as an institution has this rule because they don't want to have people presume someone is guilty before a ruling gets out, which is why they don't publicly disclose, which is what happened to Hillary Clinton and is what is going to happen to Donald Trump or already is happening.
Yeah. And so they got, I think there's going to be a lot of people and who, even if there's something spectacular that comes of this, that it won't be spectacular enough. And we kind of hinted at that, the possibility that people are going to be let down about this. But according to the article, American officials have said that they have so far found no proof of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, but current and former officials say they have uncovered evidence that Mr. Trump's associates were in repeated contact with Russian officials, including people linked to Russian intelligence. And they mentioned Roger Stone, and as I said, I monitor this. this is I monitor WikiLeaks. That's something that I do. So whenever something like that comes out, although I've been kind of aloof due to circumstance with the Vault 7 stuff, I've got a lot of things going on right now. But I do that, and I also I track the alt-right. Right, I track some of them, like Mike Cernovich. I follow him. Paul Joseph Watson. I track him. Roger Stone. Track him. And Roger Stone, they made a big to-do because he talked about how he made a claim during the election that he was talking to somebody he has an intermediary between him and WikiLeaks that was giving him information about this, and that he communicated with Guccifer 2.0, which, by the way, I don't know why he does this, but he calls it Crucifer. It's
I don't know.
He's mispronounced it. Has nobody mentioned to Roger Stone, dude, you're pronouncing the name dramatically wrong. It's anyway. So, but he gets on there. The thing is, the communique between them, and this is mentioned where it says Roger Stone, a longtime advisor to Trump, has acknowledged communicating with Guccifer. That communication was online in a comment section, public.
A public
and
comment
section. And it was asking for him to be interviewed. A bazillion people did.
That's right.
Dude, every news outlet wanted to interview this guy. So I was kind of like, I don't know about Stone, but there was a thing about Manafort recently.
Well, and with Roger Stone, he also, what put him into an indicting question was when he said that it seemed like he had some inside information where he said, in 2 days, it's going to be Podesta's turn in the barrel. Like, how did he know exactly? I mean, he seemed like he did have some sort of intimate details about at least when WikiLeaks was going to dump the info or what they had on the info or something of that nature. Which again, these are not indictment-worthy things. These are things that you just ask questions. Yeah. But Paul Manafort is a guy that has been on my radar since 2014, and even a little before that because of what's gone on in Ukraine. That's my baby. That's my baby in terms of wars that don't involve the United States, particularly that I watch with heavy intent. And Paul Manafort was a political advisor to Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine, and Yanukovych was basically the puppet to Vladimir Putin for a long time. He was the president before the EU, before the before the Euromaidan revolts that happened in early 2014 and late 2013 in Ukraine. And anyways, when Yanukovych fled Ukraine, they dumped their black books into the sea. They dumped it all into the rivers, all their money, all where the money went. And one of those recovered files had that they were giving Paul Manafort $16 to $17 million under the table for certain political business he was conducting for them.
Is it illegal to do?
That's illegal.
It would be illegal. The under the table stuff.
That's illegal.
But if it wasn't under the table, like any, because a lot of the stuff that I see shared, and I don't know the rules about this, but to wish to do business. To be paid, to be a paid person. Like, I don't know, is it illegal? Is it unethical? Is it something that we just simply say shouldn't be done because of current events?
I think,
where is that
I would
line?
say it's not illegal, but I would say it's unethical if your plan is to be a political advisor for both America and another country. that if I'm a political advisor, a global political advisor, I am a little apprehensive to that person.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with someone being a political advisor from their country of origin for their country of origin. The Paul Manafort stuff, there's also a memo. We'll try to share this on Facebook. This is early stuff. I don't want to get too much into it. But there is a memo that was released of Manafort writing about serving the government of Vladimir Putin in Ukraine
that it
to
would
Ukrainians.
Benefit. Yeah, that it would benefit. Yeah, that his work would be of a benefit to that. And again, like I is it unethical? Is it illegal? Like what nature of condemnation is it? Because
sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
Because it would seem to be the difference, and I hear this a lot. I've never used this term a witch hunt, stuff like that. But it would seem to be if it is illegal, it's not a witch hunt. If it's unethical and it's being discussed as something that requires legal authorities to investigate, then that is witchier. To me,
it's witchier. But I've used this tagline, but I believe it. For being a witch hunt, there seems to be an awful lot of bubbling cauldrons and kettles lying around and broomsticks. You've got Carter Page, Michael Flynn, Roger Stone, Jeff Sessions, Paul Manafort, all that have at least some sort of semblance to talking about Russia that involve questions. It doesn't matter what. Some of them light, some of them intense. But here's the thing about Manafort. But I'm wondering the question.
Is it a legal question or an ethical question? Because if people say it brings up ethical questions, then that's their business. That's not my concern. I mean, no, it brings up.
I think it brings up. Well, if the FBI is investigating for collusion, with a foreign entity that is staunchly against us, by the way, yes, that's illegal. And the other thing, too, about Paul Manafort, as a side note, is what Paul Manafort did was illegal in Ukraine. He was writing Ukrainian officials talking about how doing these changes will help the Putin government. So, yes, he was being absolutely engaged in illegal activity in Ukraine. And then he came over to be Trump's academic advisor. But here's the thing. We don't know the extent of these conversations. If Michael Flynn had a conversation with Sergei Kislyak about lifting sanctions before he was in, that's illegal. That's against the law.
If he did
it.
Yeah.
Which there's a reason why he resigned. It's not because he feels like he did the right thing.
I can take that so far.
And that's the thing is we don't have. Is there a smoking gun to all this? No, but there is an ironic amount of work that's been done with one particular foreign entity by a lot of people in this one group, and their associations were connected before the election was even finalized.
Yeah. As I said, I'd be interested if people have an answer on that. The difference between is it unethical? Is it illegal? What is that line? And how should that affect how we interpret this and how we view people who've worked with Russia? We'll be back right after this with more Paleo Radio, 616-656-1680.
For debates, interviews, or speeches, contact Paleo Radio Show at gmail.com.
You love to hate 'em, you hate to love 'em. You just can't get enough of them, you sick freaks. Paleo Radio's on the air.
Welcome back to Paleo Radio. We were discussing earlier on in the show a poor little rhinoceros got his horn cut off, huh, JB?
Yeah, a whole bunch. Well, not just one. There's going to be a bunch, bro.
Yeah, a bunch of them. And this was in a Czechoslovakia. In a zoo, it says Czech zoo saws off rhino horns to thwart poachers. This is out of Reuters. Czech Zoo has started sawing off the horns of its 21 rhinos to protect them from poaching after the killing of a rhinoceros in France earlier this month, which poachers did go into a French zoo and cut a rhino's horn off, if you can believe it. It's
ridiculous.
Yes, they did. It says the decision to remove the rhino's horns was not made easily at all. However, the risk that the rhinos currently face, not only in the wild but even in zoos, is too high, and the safety of the animals is our first concern. A dehorned rhino is definitely a better option than a dead rhino. And that was from Primisil Rabas, the zoo's head, he said in a statement. But if you can believe that, So it says global trade in rhino horns is banned by the United Nations Convention, but demand for the horn is strong in newly affluent Asian countries such as Vietnam, where it's prized as an ingredient in traditional medicines, and African authorities have struggled to counter rampant poaching. So again, superstitious, woo-woo, holistic health BS.
Look what it does.
Is why we cut the horns off rhinos.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
It grows back. That was something that they said, that it would grow back. And I saw, there was a picture actually of them sawing it off, and it's painful to see.
Yes.
It's sad to see.
Well, and it grows back, but it won't grow back to the height, right? You know, you think of those big male black rhinos that have that huge, long front horn. That's from years and years of building. If you cut that off, it'll have a horn again, but nothing like it used to.
Yeah, nothing like it used to. I'll tell you, man, it's such a bummer. And to know that not just that zoo, but other zoos are following the lead on this.
Yes.
And saying, we're going to do this too. Definitely a bummer.
Because people suck.
People suck. All right, speaking of people that suck, we're talking for here in the last 10 minutes of the show. And if you'd like to call in the last 10 minutes of this special birthday edition, Joe's birthday is on Thursday. My birthday is today. You're welcome to call us. We're running out of time, though. 616-656-1680. But there was a piece here by Tom Wyman over at Vice called "And Why the Right is Dominating YouTube and Why the Left Needs to Own the Future of Online Video." And he quotes Paul Joseph Watson, right? And he says, here's the quote. It's a tweet. "Twitter is a tiny echo chamber. I'm not sure the left understands the monumental butt whooping being dished out to them on YouTube." And the writer says, thus reads a tweet posted by InfoWars editor Paul Joseph Watson. "As with most things PJW does nowadays, the tweet was immediately and widely mocked. But however fun mocking Watson might be, there was a curious hollowness to the whole affair. Because on the issue, breaking the habit of a lifetime, Paul Joseph Watson is right." Mm-hmm. And this is something, we've mentioned before. We even mentioned it a little bit earlier, talking about the medium being one that's an audible one, that people are able to spin their stories. It's not this small, succinct, pithy thing that you're hoping in a drive-by people will be like, "Oh, wow, that's neat," or "Wow, that's informative." And I don't mean to diminish the power of Twitter and the kind of conversations that can happen on Twitter, but we have to kind of be real, too, at the same time on that. And say, when you have a video, and you can just go on the video and say what you want to say and sound like, the old grandpa, and they kind of mentioned it in this, how you can be the old grandpa, the cantankerous guy, the curmudgeon, and sit there in front of a camera and just rattle off, and you're going to get an audience of people.
You can.
Yeah.
I think the question is, and we're going to break it down more in the article, but the other question is, who comparing it to? Like, is there a liberal equivalent to Mike Cernovich? No. But is there a YouTube equivalent for the Young Turks on the right on YouTube? Who's the right wing?
Well, InfoWars. InfoWars it crushes them. That's the thing. InfoWars crushes all of them. And then you've got Prison Planet. That'd be another one.
Yeah.
And I would include your people. And they mentioned PewDiePie. I don't know if I'm pronouncing PewDiePie. Yeah.
Yep.
As I said, I'm not even pronouncing it properly. I don't watch it.
Yeah.
But the you got people like that, and he's a gamer. So you have a lot of these people, in fact, on kind of the YouTube right, what they're calling it. They're not traditional conservative people. That would include people like T.J. Kirk, the amazing atheist.
Yes.
He's not.
Yeah.
That's not National Review conservatism, man. Like that's a different kind. When people say right, that they're not describing what in the past Rush Limbaugh
absolutely
stuff. It's a different breed of thing, but that's really what you're getting. And they would include, I would assume, in that people like Dave Rubin, especially now that he no longer identifies, I don't think, as a liberal.
Whether he does or not, he doesn't have a choice. Dave Rubin is not a liberal.
He's not a liberal, no.
No.
He's a gay conservative.
He's a gay conservative.
Yeah, he's a log cabin. So
yes.
You've got these left-wing voices on YouTube, and look, there are some. You've got your people, you've got your high-profile individuals. Who's the guy, man? The dude from England, real popular, crazy man, wild guy.
Oh,
actor, also comedian.
Is it David Icke or no?
No.
Oh, Like Ricky Gervais?
No. Well, Ricky Gervais would be another one, but there's another guy, crazy hair, kind of curly and long hair, always the 5 o'clock shadow.
Russell Brand?
Russell Brand.
Yes.
Right? So, I mean, you've got people who would not be right-wingers who are very popular on that score. And you've got, Robert Wright, he's got videos and stuff. So that's out there, but it's such an accessible thing. It doesn't require that you have an institution in order to set up your camera and talk.
No, it doesn't. And the other thing, too, is I don't really believe that their end game is drastically, their impact is drastically big. I think a lot of them are armchair alt-righties. They're not people that are active in any way, shape, or form. For instance, like PewDiePie. PewDiePie, he's not a guy that's really in this, but he has the most views on YouTube, and his demographic is teenage boys. Teenage boys between like 14 and 18. Like, what are their demographics, I wonder? And the other thing, too, is like compare it to, yes, on the medium of YouTube, conservatives are winning out, but like, how many of them are swept under the rug of just like one show like Real Time with Bill Maher that has an HBO special and has an online presence? Like, what are their numbers?
Right. It would be interesting to see what their numbers are. And, my kids are into the game stuff. They like watching Minecraft videos. So they'll watch people play these things and talk, and there's not really any political commentary in there. But PewDiePie, and again, I apologize for just hacking his name to pieces. But yeah, PewDiePie, you got this, and where he's there, and his influence over with kids. I mean, that's not. I mean, come on, that's maybe that's the whole Generation Z thing.
Maybe
that may be why. I mean, they talk about the influence of YouTube and other things on Generation Z and how this group that's younger than the millennials are just these radical, right-winger type people. But the kind of right-wing that they're talking about when we described it, it's a curious form.
It is.
It's kind of liberal, like on gay issues. It would be pretty liberal. Mm-hmm. On other issues, it's not. And you say, that does seem a lot like YouTube people. Like it does seem like kind of the right-wing sector. But
I just don't think they're libertarian, though. If you ask them about government, the role of government, I don't think their answer would be the same as a guy like Mike Cernovich. Young people, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do not buy that there's a wave of young conservatives running around that is a bigger number than the young liberals. I mean, I just don't buy that.
Well, that would be the Hispanic poll that we talked about earlier that talks about like who would win if the 14 to 18 voted. 50,000 people, that's a decent sample. But no matter what, however the influence plays out, if you look at it and you say, okay, you have the influence of people on Twitter. Let's say a group posts something and you have a bunch of legacy institutions that retweet it. But let's say you don't have a ton. Let's say it's not it doesn't get millions of tracks on it. You're right. There's none of those numbers kind of going into it. That's going to have a certain amount of influence and reach insofar as those institutions that it touched are able to disseminate that. But you're going to have to get a lot of that to equal the hundreds of thousands of views that you get that are people who are devoted, who subscribe, who are patrons, who make these people tons and tons of money, who, while they may not be leaders in institutions or movers and shakers at a high level, culturally speaking, I think I would be interested to know more about the influence of that. I think that their numbers alone, the numbers of views that they reach compared to others, I think that that's a pretty decent cultural influence, even if it's not one that really stands out in an academic sense in stuff that we...
I understand that. I also think, though, even on a cultural influence, with 3 million people voting for Hillary Clinton more than Donald Trump, even in the election that he won, and most people sitting on the sidelines, what's our factor to show us, to give us indications that young people or middle-aged people are becoming more conservative?
Viewership. That would be the only thing I could say.
But also to say that, but if we're going to lead it with the premise that the viewership or the sourcing of Twitter is a huge echo chamber where the same people are oftentimes the same likes are coming from the same people and same retweets, can that not be said about YouTube, where the person that likes TJ Kirk is the same person that likes Richard Spencer, is the same person that likes Mike Cernovich. Yeah. And they're watching them all. They like Ben Shapiro, they like Milo, they like all those people, and they're watching every one of their ones as the same person.
That's something that was brought up in the article about how YouTube as a platform actually makes it easier for that to happen, because it lays out suggested videos, and you can just let it play, and it'll just automatically up next.
Sure.
And it'll do that, and generally it'll keep in the same genre.
Yeah.
We're already out of time.
Wow.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that
I didn't even know
happened
that was
fast.
coming.
I looked over at the time, and I was like, my goodness, I went to give the 1 minute sign, and bam, it was over.
We have like a half an hour left of stuff to say.
Oh, man. We may have to continue this, because this is a great topic.
Yeah.
Plus, I think we barely scratched the surface in terms of cultural influence and also just mass influence that YouTube has.
All right, everybody, our birthday show's over. My birthday will be done at midnight today. Joe's birthday begins at midnight. On Thursday is going to be your day, your birthday, bud. So
it will be. It'll be great.
Make sure to check us out on Spreaker. Make sure to check us out on Facebook and Twitter. And, of course, on iTunes. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us, and be back next week.
You're listening to Public Reality Radio, WPRR 1680 AM Ada, 90.1 FM Clyde Township, 95.3 FM Grand Rapids, 102.5 FM Comstock Park, and WPJC 88.3 FM Pontiac, Illinois.
And welcome back to the Thom Hartman University Book Club. Today we're reading from the